Welcome back. As I mentioned in the previous video, there are actually two types of arrays. One is called static and the other dynamic arrays. Now, what is the difference between the two? Well, the one limitation of static arrays is that they're fixed in size, meaning you need to specify the number of elements your array will hold ahead of time. So in this case, if this was a static array, I would say create an array of 7 items, knowing beforehand that in my grocery list, I'm only going to have max 7 items. Because arrays are allocated in adjacent blocks of memory when they're created, there's no guarantee that after we've allocated 7 shelves of memory that you can keep adding things on, especially in order. We solve this problem with static arrays that require us to say ahead of time, hey, I only want 7 shelves of memory, with dynamic arrays. And dynamic arrays allow us to copy and rebuild an array at a new location, which with more memory if we wanted more memory. So for example, with our static array, if we realize that we forgot another item on our list and we need 8 items, what happens is we copy this entire array, we allocate 14 blocks of memory, and paste this list plus the 8th item into that new location. Let me show you how this works with code. You see, in languages like C++, let me scroll down over here. In C++, which has static arrays, to create an array, you do something like this. You would say int a 20. And this says, I want an array that has space of 20 items. Or you can do something like int b5, and then fill up the array of 5 items with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 integers. That's what int stands for, numbers. And because of this, and because this is a static array, in order for us to add a 6th item on here, well, we would need to copy this entire array and move it over to a completely different area of memory in order to create the space for it. Now, luckily for us, when I showed you with JavaScript how to do this, well, we never had to worry about it, did we? In our JavaScript example, we never really allocated memory. And that's because in JavaScript and other languages like Python, where you have lists and array list in Java, they work like dynamic arrays. They automatically allocate memory according to the increase in size of the array. So right off the bat, you're thinking, dynamic arrays are way better, easier. I don't have to think about memory because of automatic resizing. And that gets into a discussion of managing memory, which low-level languages like C++ allow, while higher-level languages like JavaScript allow us to not think about memory and let the machine take care of it for you. There's times where maybe you do want to manage your memory and times where you don't need to, based on your needs. Obviously, having more control over memory allows you to really tweak things and make things faster. And that's why languages like C++ can be much faster than higher level languages like JavaScript. But we don't need to get into that. What we want to get out of this lesson is that dynamic array expands as you add more elements. So you don't need to determine the size ahead of time. But you may have noticed something with dynamic arrays. You see over here how I have append at O of 1. That is the same as the push command that we did in the previous lesson. But I have a star here that says it can be O of n. Why is that? Well, if we remember our array, and let's remove the extra items here that we don't need, So just say A, B, C, D. If underneath the hood, JavaScript and our machine only created 4 blocks of memory for this array, and we add another letter underneath the hood, because this is a dynamic array, it's going to loop over these items, copy them, and move it to a different location with now 8 blocks of space, so that we can keep adding onto here. And you see here, because we did this looping, the operation becomes O of n. So that's something to keep in mind. Although it's a minor detail, it's good to know how things work underneath the hood. And most of the time, with the languages that you're working and during interviews, you will be talking about dynamic arrays, and you won't have to worry about allocating memory and thinking about the possibility that you might have to copy the array. That's really low level. But I wanted to show you how they work so that you have those fundamentals going forward. And understand that when it comes to arrays, just because you're adding at the end using the push command, you can assume that it's O of 1 most of the times, or constant time. But every once in a while, you might encounter a situation where it's O of n, linear time. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.